I don't care if you have a reservation. We don't allow wheelchairs in my restaurant. It makes the other guests uncomfortable. Ben Carter, a black single dad in his mid-30s, froze, his dark brown. It was supposed to be a special night. Lily's first straight A report card, their monthly tradition of celebrating her achievements. But now, watching the restaurant owner, Vincent Romano, block the entrance with his arms crossed, Ben felt his stomach turn. "Sir, I've eaten here before," the woman said calmly, though her hands gripped the wheelchair's armrests. "I made a reservation 3 days ago under the name Claire Donovan." "I don't care what name you used," Vincent snapped. "My restaurant has an image to maintain. Wheelchairs don't fit that image. There are plenty of other places you can eat." The Friday night crowd was watching now. Some looked uncomfortable. Others pulled out their phones. No one said anything. "Dad," Lily whispered, tugging his sleeve, her small brown fingers curling into the fabric. "That's not fair." Ben looked down at his daughter, then back at the woman being humiliated in public. As a black man in a high-end spot like this, he already knew what it felt like to be looked at like you didn't belong. He thought about walking away. This wasn't his problem. He had Lily to think about, and he couldn't afford to make scenes. But then he remembered what he taught her about standing up for what's right. He stepped forward. "Excuse me," Ben said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "What exactly is the problem here?" Vincent turned, his expensive suit catching the restaurant's warm lighting. "This doesn't concern you. Please wait your turn." "It concerns me when I see discrimination happening right in front of my daughter." Ben kept his voice level. "This woman has a reservation. She's a paying customer. What's the actual issue?" "The issue is that I run a high-end establishment," Vincent said, his face reddening. "Our tables are close together. Our aisles are narrow. A wheelchair would disrupt the entire dining room. It's a safety concern." "That's not what you said a minute ago," the woman in the wheelchair interjected. Her voice was controlled, but Ben could hear the anger beneath it. "You said wheelchairs make people uncomfortable. That's discrimination, Mr. Romano." "I have the right to refuse service to anyone," Vincent shot back. Ben glanced at the woman. She was probably in her mid-30s with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a nice sweater, nothing fancy, but she carried herself with a dignity that Vincent's words couldn't diminish. Her wheelchair was manual, well-worn, the kind that spoke of years of use rather than a temporary injury. "Actually, you don't," Ben said. "The Americans with Disabilities Act says otherwise. You're required to provide reasonable accommodations." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "And who are you? Her lawyer?" "I'm someone who knows right from wrong." "Dad's right," Lily said, stepping forward, her tight curls bouncing as she moved. Her small voice carried more courage than most adults in that line. "Our teacher says everyone should be treated fairly." Vincent looked at Lily, then back at Ben. "You're teaching your daughter to interfere in private business matters, some parenting." Ben felt his jaw clench. "I'm teaching my daughter to stand up for people who are being treated unfairly, something you clearly don't understand." The woman in the wheelchair looked up at Ben, surprise evident in her hazel eyes. "Thank you, but you don't have to do this. I'll just go." "No," Ben said firmly. "You made a reservation. You have every right to be here." Vincent pulled out his phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police. You're trespassing and you're causing a disturbance." "Call them," Ben said. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in your business practices." Several people in line had their phones out now, recording everything. Vincent noticed, and his expression shifted from anger to something more calculating. "Fine," he said coldly. "You want to make this a problem? You're both banned from this restaurant permanently. And if you don't leave my property in the next 30 seconds, I will have you arrested for trespassing." The woman wheeled herself backward. "It's okay, I'm leaving. This," she cleared her throat, "isn't worth it." "Wait," Ben said, but she was already turning toward the street. Vincent smirked at Ben. "You too. Get out and take your little activist daughter with you." Ben felt Lily's hands slip into his, her warm brown fingers squeezing tight. He wanted to say more, wanted to make Vincent understand how wrong this was, but he knew it wouldn't change anything. Some people's minds were already made up. "Come on, Lily," he said quietly. "Let's go." They walked out into the cool October evening. The woman in the wheelchair had stopped at the corner, wiping her eyes quickly before straightening her shoulders. Ben caught up to her. "Hey, are you okay?" She turned and he would see the remnants of tears she was trying to hide. "I'm fine. Thank you for what you did in there." You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Ben knelt down so he was at her eye level. What he did was wrong. I'm sorry you had to experience that. It happens more than you'd think, she said with a bitter laugh. I'm Claire, by the way, Claire Donovan. Ben Carter. This is my daughter, Lily. Hi, Lily said shyly, glancing up with big dark eyes. I'm sorry that man was so mean to you. Claire smiled at her, and the sadness in her face lifted slightly. Thank you, Lily. That's very sweet of you to say. Were you really going to eat there? Lily asked. It looked fancy. I was, Claire admitted. It's been a hard week and I wanted to treat myself, but I think the universe had other plans. Ben stood. We were supposed to celebrate Lily's report card there. All A's for the first time. That's wonderful. Claire's smile became genuine. Congratulations, Lily. Thanks, Lily said, beaming. Dad promised me fancy pasta. Well, I know a place, Claire said. It's not as fancy as Bissimo, but the food is better, and the owner actually believes in treating people like human beings. If you'd like, I could show you. Ben hesitated. You don't have to do that. I know, but you stood up for me when everyone else just watched. The least I can do is help you find somewhere to celebrate. Besides, she added with a small smile, I could use the company. Eating alone isn't as fun as it sounds. Lily tugged Ben's sleeve. Can we, Dad? Please. Ben looked at Claire, then at his daughter's hopeful face. Okay, if you're sure. I'm sure. The restaurant Claire recommended was 15 minutes away, a small Italian place called Angelo's with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread hitting them as soon as they walked in. The owner, an older man with a thick accent, greeted Claire like an old friend. Miss Claire, so good to see you. Your usual table if it's available, Angelo. And I have friends with me tonight. Angelo beamed at Ben and Lily. Any friend of Miss Claire is a friend of Angelo's. Come, come. He led them to a corner booth, already adjusting the table to accommodate Claire's wheelchair without being asked. Within minutes, they had menus and a basket of warm bread. This place is great, Lily said, her eyes wide as she looked around at the cozy interior. It's like someone's house. That's exactly what Angelo wants it to feel like, Claire said. He and his wife Rosa opened this place 30 years ago. Their whole family works here. Ben watched Claire as she talked to Lily, explaining the menu items, asking about her favorite subjects in school. There was something about her that didn't quite fit. The worn wheelchair and modest clothes suggested one thing, but her confidence, her ease in directing them here, the way Angelo treated her, it suggested something else. So, what do you do, Ben? Claire asked as they waited for their food. I'm a delivery driver, he said, and I pick up warehouse shifts on weekends when I can get them. That's a lot of work. It's what needs to be done. He didn't elaborate, didn't mention that his wife had died 2 years ago, that the medical bills had wiped out their savings, that he was barely keeping their heads above water in a world that already expected a black single father to fail. Those weren't first conversation topics. And you, Claire? He asked. What do you do? She hesitated just for a second. I work in real estate, mostly administrative stuff, nothing exciting. It was the first time Ben thought she might not be entirely truthful, but everyone was entitled to their privacy. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, was coloring on the paper placemat Angelo had given her. Miss Claire, can I ask you something? Of course. How long have you been in a wheelchair? Lily, Ben said quickly. That's personal. It's okay, Claire said. I don't mind. 4 years, Lily. I was in a car accident. Does it hurt? Not anymore. It was scary at first, learning to do everything differently. But I figured it out. You're really brave, Lily said seriously. I think if I was in a wheelchair, I'd be scared all the time. You know what? You're braver than you think. And your dad is one of the bravest people I've met. Ben felt his face warm against his deep brown skin. I just said what needed to be said. Most people don't. They see something wrong and they look away because it's easier. You didn't. Their food arrived, and for a while they just ate and talked about lighter things. Lily told Claire about her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who made learning fun, about her best friend Emma, who wanted to be a veterinarian, about the book she was reading, something with dragons and magic that Ben couldn't keep track of, but Lily loved. Claire listened like every word mattered. She asked follow-up questions, remembered details, engaged with Lily in a way that made the girl light up. Ben found himself relaxing for the first time in months, watching his daughter be genuinely happy in a way she hadn't been since her mother died. Your mom would be proud of those grades, Claire said gently to Lily. Lily's face fell slightly. She died 2 years ago. "I'm so sorry," Claire said, and her sympathy sounded genuine, not the practiced condolence Ben had gotten used to hearing. "That must be really hard sometimes," Lily admitted. "But Dad takes good care of me." "I can see that." When the check came, Claire reached for it quickly. "This is on me." "No way," Ben protested. "You already helped us find this place." "Please, you lost your reservation because of me. It's the least I can do." "You didn't cost us anything. Vincent Romano's bigotry did." They argued politely until Angelo came over, laughing. "Miss Claire already has a tab here. It's taken care of?" Claire smiled innocently. "Oops." Ben shook his head, but couldn't help smiling. "Thank you, but I owe you one." "No, you don't. We're even." As they walked outside, Claire pulled out her phone. "Could I get your number? I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe we could do this again sometime." Ben gave her his number, watching as she saved it. A black sedan pulled up to the curb, and a driver got out to help Claire into the back seat, folding her wheelchair with practiced ease. "You have a driver?" Lily asked, impressed. "Sometimes," Claire said, "when I don't feel like driving myself." "Good night, Lily. Congratulations again on your report card." "Night, Miss Claire." As the car pulled away, Ben stared after it. That wasn't a regular sedan. That was a private car service, the kind that cost serious money. And Claire had mentioned she worked in real estate doing administrative work. Something didn't add up. "Dad, I really like her," Lily said as they walked to their bus stop. "Me too, sweetie." "Do you think we'll see her again?" "I hope so." What Ben didn't know was that by the time they got home that night, the video of the confrontation at Bissimo had already been posted online. Someone in line had captured everything. Vincent's discrimination, Ben's defense, the entire exchange, and it was spreading fast. By Saturday morning, Ben woke to his phone exploding with notifications. 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages from numbers he didn't recognize. "What the hell?" he muttered, scrolling through messages that all seemed to reference a video. He found it on social media. The video had been viewed over 40,000 times already, and the numbers were climbing. He watched himself confront Vincent Romano while Lily stood beside him. The comments were flooding in faster than he could read them. "This guy is a hero. Vincent Romano should be ashamed of himself. Everyone needs to boycott Bissimo until they change their policies. Can someone find out who this dad is? He deserves recognition." The way his daughter stood up too. That's good parenting right there. Ben's hands shook as he watched the video again. His face was clear. Lily's face was clear. Their brown skin, their features, everything was out there now. Their names hadn't been shared yet, but it was only a matter of time. "Dad?" Lily appeared in his doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Why are you up so early?" "Come here, sweetie." He pulled her onto the couch. "Remember last night at the restaurant with the mean man?" "Yeah." "Someone recorded what happened and they put it online. A lot of people have seen it." Lily's eyes widened. "Are we famous?" "I don't know if I'd call it that, but some people might recognize us for a while." "Is that bad?" "I'm not sure yet." His phone rang, a local news station. He let it go to voicemail, then another call from a different station, then a call from a number with a New York area code. By Sunday morning, the video had over 200,000 views. The story had been picked up by major news outlets. "Local father stands up to restaurant owner, disability discrimination," read one headline. "Single dad defends woman in wheelchair, gets banned from restaurant," read another. The pressure on Bissimo was intense. Their social media pages were being flooded with angry comments. Review sites were getting hammered with 1-star ratings. People were calling for boycotts, investigations, legal action, and Vincent Romano was fighting back. He gave an interview to a local news station Sunday afternoon, looking composed and reasonable in his expensive suit. "I understand emotions are high right now," Vincent said, his voice smooth and measured. "But people don't know the full story. My restaurant has very specific accessibility challenges that aren't immediately visible in that video. The aisles between tables are quite narrow. They meet code, but just barely. The fire marshal has been very clear with me about occupancy limits and evacuation procedures. Adding a wheelchair into that equation creates genuine safety concerns, not just for the person using it, but for all my other guests." The interviewer pressed him. "But witnesses say you specifically stated that wheelchairs make other guests uncomfortable." Vincent's expression didn't waver. That was taken out of context. What I meant was that when guests see someone struggling to navigate a space that clearly isn't designed for accessibility, it makes everyone uncomfortable, including the person in the wheelchair. I was trying to save that woman from an unpleasant experience. I've had disabled guests in the past who've told me they felt awkward trying to maneuver through the tight spaces. I thought I was being considerate. Do you have any comment on the man who defended her? Ben Carter? I think Mr. Carter meant well. He saw what he perceived as an injustice and he spoke up. I can respect that impulse. But he didn't understand the full situation. He didn't know about the safety regulations I have to follow, about the previous complaints I've received from disabled guests, about the difficulty of navigating my restaurant. And frankly, bringing his young daughter into that confrontation, escalating the situation in front of her, I question whether that was responsible parenting. Children shouldn't be exposed to that kind of conflict. Ben felt his anger rising as he watched. Vincent was twisting everything, making himself sound reasonable while subtly attacking Ben's parenting. His phone rang. It was Claire. Ben, have you seen the news? Yeah, I've seen it. Vincent is lying through his teeth. I did some research last night. Bissimo has been cited twice in the past 3 years for ADA violations. Once for inadequate bathroom accessibility, once for lack of proper signage and accessible seating. He was given deadlines to fix both issues, and he fought them. He eventually paid fines, but never actually made the improvements. How did you find all that? Public records, city building department. It's all there if you know where to look. She paused. Ben, there's something else. Vincent filed a lawsuit this morning. Ben felt the ground shift beneath him. What? Defamation. He's suing you for damages, claiming that your statements in the video and the resulting publicity have caused irreparable harm to his business reputation. He's asking for $200,000. Ben couldn't breathe. I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money. I know. That's the point. He's not trying to win. He's trying to scare you into backing down. If you're buried in legal bills, fighting a lawsuit you can't afford, you'll shut up and go away. The story dies and Vincent gets to play the victim of an online mob. But I didn't say anything that wasn't true. I was there. I saw what happened. Truth is a defense against defamation, but you still need a lawyer to make that argument in court. And lawyers are expensive. Ben sat down heavily on his worn couch, his head spinning. The cushions sagged beneath him, the framed photo of his smiling black family hanging crooked on the wall above the TV. I can't fight this. I can't afford a lawyer. I'll lose my apartment. Child services will get involved. I'll lose custody of Lily. Ben, listen to me. Claire's voice was firm. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to let Vincent Romano destroy your life because you stood up for me. Claire, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm going to pay for your legal defense. The best lawyers in the state. Ben was silent for a long moment. I can't accept that. Yes, you can. No, I can't. I don't know you well enough to accept that kind of help. And even if I did, I have my pride. I can't just let someone else fight my battles. This isn't about pride, Ben. This is about survival. Vincent is using the legal system as a weapon. He knows you can't fight back. That's why he's doing this. But why would you help me? You barely know me. Because what you did matters. And because I have resources you don't. And it would be wrong of me to watch you suffer when I could help. She paused. Ben, can we meet? There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you Friday night. They met at a park near Ben's apartment on Monday afternoon. Lily was at school and Ben had called in sick to his warehouse shift. Something he never did, but he was too shaken to work. Claire was waiting by the fountain, her wheelchair positioned in the shade of a large oak tree. Thanks for coming, she said as Ben sat down on the bench beside her. What did you want to talk about? Claire took a deep breath. I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am. Ben's stomach tightened. Okay. When I said I work in real estate doing administrative work, that was technically true, but it's not the whole truth. She met his eyes. My name is Claire Donovan. I own Donovan Industries. The name hit Ben like a physical blow. Donovan Industries, one of the largest real estate development companies in the Pacific Northwest. He'd driven past their buildings, seen their signs on major construction projects across Portland and Seattle. They were involved in everything from commercial developments to affordable housing initiatives. You're that Claire Donovan, he said slowly. Yes, the CEO, the millionaire. Ben stood, pacing a few steps away. His mind was reeling. The contrast between his scuffed sneakers and the polished downtown logos he'd seen bearing her name flashed through his mind. Why didn't you tell me? Because when people find out who I am, everything changes, Claire said, and he could hear the exhaustion in her voice. They either start treating me like I'm fragile, poor little rich girl in a wheelchair, isn't that tragic? Or they start seeing dollar signs, friends who suddenly need loans, family members who have investment opportunities, men who are very interested in dating me once they know my net worth. I wanted you and Lily to see me, not my bank account. So you lied. I omitted. There's a difference. Is there? Ben turned back to her. You let me think you were just some regular person struggling with a disability. You let me feel sorry for you. I never asked for your pity, Claire said sharply. You stood up for me because you thought it was right, not because you felt sorry for me. Would you have acted differently if you'd known I was wealthy? No, but then what's the problem? The problem is that I've been sitting here agonizing about how I'm going to fight this lawsuit, thinking I'm going to lose everything, and you're sitting on millions of dollars acting like we're equals. We're not equals, Claire. You could buy and sell me 1,000 times over. Money doesn't make us unequal, Ben. It's just money. Easy to say when you have it. Claire wheeled closer to him. You're right. It is easy to say. But let me tell you what money doesn't buy. It doesn't buy genuine kindness. It doesn't buy someone who sees you as a person instead of a disability or a payday. It doesn't buy the kind of courage you showed Friday night when you could have just walked away. Don't, Ben said. Don't try to make me feel better about this by romanticizing what I did. I'm not some noble hero. I'm a guy who's barely keeping his head above water. And now I'm being sued for $200,000 I don't have, which is why you're offering to help. By paying for my lawyer with your money, making me even more indebted to you. It's not a debt. It's standing together against someone who's wrong. Ben was quiet for a long moment, staring at the fountain. As a black man who'd spent his life trying not to owe anyone anything, the idea of accepting help on this scale twisted in his gut. If I accept your help, everyone's going to think I stood up for you because I knew you were rich. They're going to think I orchestrated this whole thing to get close to your money. Do you care what people think? When it affects Lily? Yeah, I do. What happens when she goes to school and the other kids say her dad is a gold digger? What happens when people look at us and see a scheme instead of what actually happened? Then they're idiots who don't deserve your energy. That's a luxury you can afford, Claire. I can't. My reputation is all I have. Claire looked at him for a long moment. So, what are you saying? You'd rather lose the lawsuit, lose your apartment, potentially lose custody of Lily than accept help from someone who wants to give it? I'm saying I need to think about this. I need to figure out if accepting your help is going to make things better or worse in the long run. While you're thinking, Vincent's lawyers are working. Every day you wait is a day they're building their case. I know, Ben ran his hands through his hair. I need time. Okay, Claire said quietly. Take the time you need. But Ben, regardless of whether you accept my help, I want you to know something. What you did Friday night mattered to me. Not because you stood up for a millionaire, but because you stood up for a person being treated poorly. That means something. You mean something. Don't let Vincent Romano take that away from you. Ben nodded, unable to trust his voice. He walked away from the park, feeling more confused and overwhelmed than ever. That evening, after he picked Lily up from school, she was unusually quiet during dinner. What's wrong, kiddo? He asked. Emma's mom asked me about the video today. She wanted to know if we were going to be on TV. What did you tell her? I said I didn't know. Then Emma said her dad said you only stood up for that lady because you knew she was rich. Lily's eyes filled with tears. That's not true, right? You didn't know. Ben pulled his daughter into his lap, her braids tickling his chin. No, sweetie, I had no idea. I stood up for Miss Claire because what Mr. Romano was doing was wrong. That's the only reason. That's what I said. But Emma's dad said people don't do nice things without a reason. Some people think like that, but they're wrong. Sometimes people do nice things just because it's right. I know, you taught me that. Lily wiped her eyes. Are we in trouble, Dad? We might be in some trouble, but we'll figure it out. Because of the lawsuit? Ben was surprised. How do you know about that? I heard you talking on the phone. Are we going to lose our apartment? No, Ben said firmly, even though he wasn't sure it was true. I'm going to figure something out. I promise. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ben sat at his small kitchen table going through his options. He could try to represent himself in the lawsuit, but he'd lose. Vincent's lawyers would destroy him. He could try to find a pro bono attorney, but defamation cases weren't usually the kind that legal aid took on. He could accept Claire's help, but then he'd be exactly what people were already accusing him of being. There was no good option. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. I know you said you needed time, but I found something you should see. Can I come by tomorrow? Ben hesitated, then texted back, okay, after I drop Lily at school, 9 a.m. I'll be there. Claire arrived at 9 sharp. Ben's apartment was tiny, barely big enough for him and Lily, and he felt embarrassed having Claire see it. The water stains on the ceiling, the secondhand furniture, the kitchen that was really just a corner of the living room, the photo of him, Lily, and his late wife smiling in their Sunday best on the wall. But if Claire noticed or cared, she didn't show it. She wheeled herself in and got straight to business. I had my legal team do some research on Vincent Romano, she said, pulling out a tablet. Ben, he's done this before, multiple times. Done what? Discriminated against disabled customers, then used legal threats to keep them quiet. We found 6 documented incidents in the past 3 years. 6 people who had experiences similar to mine at Bissimo. And in each case, Vincent paid them to sign non-disclosure agreements. Ben stared at the screen as Claire showed him the evidence, names, dates, settlement amounts. How did you get this? My lawyers have resources, and once you start digging into public records, things emerge. These settlements were part of legal proceedings, which means there's a paper trail if you know where to look. So, he's been doing this for years. Yes, and the amounts he paid are telling. $15,000 here, $10,000 there, $20,000 for the most recent one. He's essentially buying silence. These people couldn't afford to fight him legally. So, they took the money and signed away their right to talk about what happened. Ben felt sick. How is that legal? Non-disclosure agreements are legal. Morally, she cleared her throat, questionable in cases like this, but legal. The problem is that each victim is isolated. They don't know about the others. They think they're the only one, so they take the settlement and stay quiet. But if we could get them to come forward together, they'd break their NDAs. Vincent would sue them. He could try. But if multiple people violate their NDAs simultaneously, and if there's a legitimate public interest in the information they're sharing, the legal risk gets more complicated, especially if they have good lawyers defending them. Lawyers you would pay for? Yes. Ben stood, pacing the small space, his socks whispering on the worn linoleum. So, your plan is to track down these 6 people, convince them to risk being sued, and create some kind of united front against Vincent. That's a huge ask, Claire. I know, but it's the truth. Vincent Romano has a pattern of discrimination. He's been getting away with it for years because he has money and power, and he uses both to keep his victims silent. Your case isn't an isolated incident. It's the one that finally got caught on camera. And what do you get out of this? What's your angle? Claire looked at him steadily. My angle is that I'm tired of people like Vincent Romano thinking they can treat disabled people however they want because no one will hold them accountable. My angle is that you stood up for me when no one else would, and I'm not going to sit back and watch him destroy you for it. That's my angle, Ben. Is it good enough for you? Ben sat back down, his anger deflating. I'm sorry, this is all too much. A week ago, I was just a delivery driver trying to raise my daughter. Now I'm at the center of some viral video being sued for more money than I'll make in 5 years. And a millionaire is offering to save me. It's overwhelming. I know, and I'm sorry for not telling you who I was from the beginning, but Ben, we can fight this. Not just for you, but for everyone. Vincent has hurt. We can make sure he never does this again. At what cost? Whatever it takes. Ben looked at this woman, this stranger who'd become something more than a stranger in the span of a few days, and made his decision. Okay, I'll accept your help, but on one condition. What's that? If we do this, we do it right. We find those 6 people, we tell the whole story, and if I'm going to be the face of this thing, then I'm going to make sure it's about more than just me. Deal? Claire smiled. Deal. The lawyer Claire hired was named Patricia Huang, and she was exactly the kind of attorney Ben had always imagined rich people had access to. sharp, confident, and expensive looking in a way that made Ben acutely aware of his discount store clothes and scuffed work boots. "Mr. Carter," Patricia said at their first meeting, "I've reviewed Vincent Romano's complaint. It's weak. He's claiming defamation. But everything you said in that video is protected opinion based on observed facts. You expressed your view that his actions constituted discrimination. That's not defamation, that's free speech. So, we can get it dismissed eventually?" "Yes. But Vincent's strategy isn't to win. It's to drag this out, make it expensive and exhausting, and hope you give up. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to respond aggressively. We'll file a motion to dismiss. We'll countersue for malicious prosecution if necessary, and we're going to expose his pattern of discrimination." Claire mentioned you've been looking into his past settlements? "We have. And we've made contact with 3 of the 6 victims. They're scared, but they're also angry. Angry enough to consider breaking their NDAs if they have legal protection." "Can you protect them?" Ben asked. "We can defend them," Patricia cleared her throat. "And if multiple people come forward at once, telling a consistent story of Vincent's behavior, the legal calculus changes. He can't sue everyone without looking like exactly what he is. A bully using money and lawyers to silence his victims." Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia's team worked around the clock. Ben continued his delivery routes and warehouse shifts, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for Lily. But his evenings were consumed with calls from Patricia, reviewing documents, discussing strategy, and he saw Claire more and more frequently. She came by the apartment to check on him, to bring updates, to make sure he was holding up under the pressure. Sometimes she brought dinner, takeout from Angelo's, which Lily loved. Sometimes she just sat and talked while Lily did her homework at the small table, her braids swinging as she bent over her worksheets. "Dad really likes you," Lily said to Claire one evening while Ben was in the kitchen. "I really like him too," Claire said, not realizing Ben could hear. "Are you going to be his girlfriend?" Ben came around the corner, his face red against his dark skin. "What?" "I'm just asking." Claire was smiling. "That's a question your dad and I would need to talk about first." "But you want to, right?" Lily asked. "That's enough," Ben said. "Go brush your teeth." After Lily reluctantly headed to the bathroom, Ben sat down beside Claire. "Sorry about that. She's been asking a lot of questions lately." "It's okay. She's perceptive. Too perceptive sometimes." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire said, "For what it's worth, I wouldn't mind if her question had a yes answer eventually. When all this legal stuff is settled and we're not in crisis mode." Ben looked at her. "Really?" "Really. You and Lily, you're special. Different from anyone I've met since the accident. Maybe different from anyone I've met ever." "We're pretty ordinary, Claire." "No, you're not. You're genuine, and that's increasingly rare." Ben felt something shift in his chest. "When this is over, when Vincent's lawsuit is done, and everything calms down, I'd like to take you out properly. Not as the guy you're helping legally, but just as Ben." "I'd like that." The first break in the case came from an unexpected source. A man named Marcus Webb reached out to Patricia's office. He was a veteran who'd lost his legs in Iraq and had been denied service at Bissimo 2 years ago. Vincent had accused him of being drunk when he was actually experiencing PTSD symptoms from a fireworks display nearby. "He humiliated me in front of everyone," Marcus told them in a conference room at Patricia's firm. "Said I was making a scene, that I needed to leave. When I tried to explain what was happening, he called the police. They understood once I showed them my veteran's ID and they could see I wasn't drunk, but the damage was done. Everyone in that restaurant saw me treated like a criminal." "And he offered you a settlement?" Patricia asked. $15,000. Made me sign papers saying I'd never talk about what happened. I needed the money. My medical bills were drowning me. So I signed. Breaking that agreement could have legal consequences. "I don't care anymore. I've watched that video of Mr. Carter standing up for that woman, and I realized I should have done more 2 years ago. I shouldn't have let Romano buy my silence." The second victim to come forward was Janet Lynn, an elderly woman who used a walker. Her story was similar. Denied entry to Bissimo. Told the restaurant couldn't accommodate her equipment. Escorted out by security. Settlement, $10,000. "I was celebrating my 50th wedding anniversary," Janet said, tears in her eyes. "My husband and I had been looking forward to it for months. And Vincent Romano made me feel like I wasn't good enough for his restaurant because I needed help walking. My husband died 6 months later. That was our last anniversary. He ruined it. The third was Thomas Griffin, a man with cerebral palsy who used a motorized wheelchair. Vincent had called the police on him, claiming he was disturbing other guests when Thomas had simply been trying to navigate the narrow aisles. He treated me like I was subhuman, Thomas said, like my existence was an inconvenience to him and his precious restaurant. I took his $20,000 because I had to, but I've regretted it every day since. With 3 victims willing to testify to a pattern of discrimination, Patricia filed an amended response to Vincent's lawsuit. Instead of just defending Ben, she went on offense. We're arguing that Vincent Romano has engaged in systematic discrimination against disabled individuals, Patricia explained to Ben. His lawsuit against you is part of that pattern, using legal threats to silence anyone who calls out his behavior. We're not just defending you anymore, we're building a civil rights case. The media coverage intensified. Restaurant owner's history of disability discrimination revealed, read the headlines. Multiple victims come forward against Bissimo owner. Vincent's lawyers tried to downplay it, but the evidence was mounting. The more attention the case got, the more victims came forward. Within a week, Patricia had 7 documented cases of discrimination, each with similar patterns. Denial of service, humiliation, legal threats, settlements with NDAs. Vincent Romano gave another interview, and this time he looked rattled. These people are being manipulated, he insisted. Someone is paying them to make false accusations. This is a coordinated attack on my business by people with an agenda. What agenda would that be? The interviewer asked. I don't know, but when a CEO worth millions of dollars decides to go after a small business owner, you have to question the motives. This isn't about accessibility or civil rights. This is about destroying me. Why would Claire Donovan want to destroy you? Vincent hesitated. I don't know, but clearly there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe she had a grudge. Maybe she saw an opportunity. All I know is that I'm a small business owner trying to survive, and I'm being targeted by people with unlimited resources. Ben watched the interview with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. Vincent was losing control of the narrative, getting defensive, making himself look worse with every word. His phone rang. It was Claire. Did you see it? She asked. Yeah, he's falling apart. Good. Patricia thinks we can push for a settlement now. Vincent's lawyers are going to want this over before he says anything else that damages his case. What kind of settlement? Full dismissal of his lawsuit against you, public apology to you and all 7 victims. Monetary compensation for the victims, double what they originally received. Mandatory accessibility improvements at the restaurant overseen by an independent compliance officer, and agreement that Bissimo will undergo regular ADA audits for the next 5 years. Will he agree to all that? If he's smart. His business is bleeding money. His reputation is destroyed. The longer this drags on, the worse it gets for him. But Vincent didn't settle. Instead, he doubled down. He filed an emergency motion claiming that Ben and Claire's relationship proved there was a conspiracy against him. This, the lawyer cleared his throat. Entire situation is orchestrated, his lawyers argued. Mr. Carter and Miss Donovan are romantically involved. Miss Donovan is funding Mr. Carter's defense. This isn't about justice, it's a personal vendetta disguised as a civil rights case. The motion forced Ben and Claire to sit for depositions about their relationship. They spent hours in a conference room answering invasive questions from Vincent's lawyers. When did you first become romantically involved with Miss Donovan? The lawyer asked Ben. We're not romantically involved, Ben said. But you've spent significant time together since the incident at the restaurant. Because she's helping me with a lawsuit. That doesn't make us romantically involved. Miss Donovan has been to your apartment multiple times. She's had dinner with you and your daughter. You've been seen together at various locations around the city. That sounds like a relationship to me. It sounds like friendship, Ben said firmly. Claire has been incredibly generous with her time and resources. That doesn't mean we're dating. But you'd like to be dating, wouldn't you? You admitted as much to Miss Donovan, according to her statement. Ben felt his face flush. I said that when this was all over, I'd like to take her out properly. That's not the same as having a relationship now. But you admit you have romantic feelings for her. Yes, so what? So it raises questions about your motivations. Did you stand up for Miss Donovan at Bissimo because you saw injustice or because you saw an opportunity? I didn't even know who she was. But you do now. And now she's paying for your defense, spending time with you and your daughter, offering you things you could never afford on your own. Seems convenient, doesn't it? Patricia cut in. This is harassment. Mr. Carter's personal feelings are irrelevant to whether Vincent Romano discriminated against disabled customers. They're relevant to whether this entire case is motivated by personal animus rather than legitimate legal claims. The deposition went on for 3 more hours. By the end, Ben felt exhausted and dirty, like everything good about meeting Claire had been twisted into something ugly. Claire's deposition was equally brutal. Vincent's lawyers pressed her on her wealth, her motives for helping Ben, her disability, her company. They tried to paint her as a lonely, bitter woman, looking for revenge against anyone who reminded her of her limitations. Isn't it true, Miss Donovan, that you've had difficulty maintaining relationships since your accident? They asked. That's not relevant. Isn't it true that your fiancé left you after you became paralyzed? Yes, so what? And isn't it possible that you saw Vincent Romano's treatment of you as an opportunity to find someone who would accept your disability? Someone who would be grateful for your financial support? That's offensive. But is it accurate? No, it's not. I helped Ben because what Vincent did was wrong, not because I'm trying to buy a relationship, and yet you've admitted you have feelings for Mr. Carter. Yes, I do. But those feelings developed after I started helping him. They're not why I helped him. When the depositions were finally over, Ben and Claire met in the parking garage, both looking shell-shocked. That was horrible, Claire said. They tried to make it sound like we're running some kind of scam. I know. She looked at him. Are you okay? No, but I will be. He moved closer to her wheelchair. Claire, I need to tell you something. Those lawyers, they tried to make it sound like my feelings for you are part of some scheme, but they're not. They're real. And they started before I knew about your money, before any of this legal stuff. I'm not with you because you're helping me. I want to be with you because you're you. I know that, Claire said softly. Do you? Because right now, with everyone saying I'm using you, I need you to know the truth. I do know the truth, Ben. I know exactly who you are, and I want you to know that my feelings are real too. This isn't about my money or your gratitude or any of the garbage Vincent's lawyers are trying to suggest. This is about 2 people who found each other in an unexpected way and realized they don't want to let go. Ben leaned down and kissed her. It was their first kiss, soft and tentative, in a concrete parking garage with fluorescent lights humming overhead. Not romantic by any standard measure, but perfect in its honesty. When they broke apart, Claire was smiling. So I guess we are dating now. I guess we are. Vincent's lawyers are going to have a field day with this. Let them. I don't care anymore. You're worth it. The breakthrough in the case came from an unlikely source, a journalist named David Park, who'd been investigating Vincent Romano for an entirely different story about business licensing violations. In the course of his research, David discovered that 5 years ago, before any of the documented discrimination incidents, Vincent had been sued by the city for refusing to install required accessibility features during a major restaurant renovation. He'd lost the lawsuit and been ordered to make specific improvements, widening aisles, installing grab bars in bathrooms, providing accessible seating options, improving signage. The court had given him 6 months to comply. He'd never done it. He just ignored the order, David told Patricia when he brought her the documents. The city never followed up, never sent inspectors, never enforced the judgment. He was supposed to pay fines for every month he was out of compliance, but someone dropped the ball. He's been operating in violation of a court order for 5 years. Patricia immediately filed another amended complaint, this time adding the city's failure to enforce accessibility laws as part of the case. The revelation was explosive. Restaurant owner ignored court order for 5 years, read the headlines. City failed to enforce disability rights laws. The Portland Building Department launched an emergency investigation. The state attorney general got involved. Suddenly, Vincent wasn't just facing a civil lawsuit, he was facing potential criminal charges for violating a court order. The pressure became unbearable. Vincent's investors all pulled out. His head chef quit, followed by half his waitstaff. Reservations had dried up weeks ago, but now his suppliers started refusing to deliver. The restaurant was effectively finished. Vincent's lawyers came back to Patricia with a settlement offer. Mr. Romano is willing to dismiss all claims against Mr. Carter. He'll issue a public apology. He'll compensate all 7 victims for double their original settlements, and he'll finally comply with the 5-year-old court order regarding accessibility improvements. Not enough, Patricia said. He has to meet with each victim personally and apologize face to face. No lawyers, no scripts, just him acknowledging what he did. And the restaurant undergoes independent ADA compliance audits annually for the next 10 years. If he fails even once, the settlement is voided and we resume litigation. Vincent's lawyers balked, but they didn't have leverage. Vincent agreed to everything. The personal apologies were scheduled for December, almost 3 months after that October night outside Bissimo. Ben was present for each one, lending support to the victims who'd become more than case files to him. They'd become friends. Marcus Webb went first. He sat across from Vincent in Patricia's conference room, his prosthetic legs visible, and listened as Vincent spoke. "I'm sorry," Vincent said. "I didn't see you as a person that night. I saw a problem, a disruption to my carefully controlled environment. I was wrong. You deserve dignity and respect, and I gave you neither. I'm sorry." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know if you mean that, but I appreciate you saying it, and I hope you actually learned something from all this." Janet Lynn's meeting was more emotional. She cried as Vincent apologized for ruining her last anniversary with her husband. "I can't give you that night back," Vincent said, "but I want you to know that I understand now what I took from you. It wasn't just dinner. It was a memory you should have had." Thomas Griffin was the hardest. He looked Vincent directly in the eye and said, "You made me feel like I wasn't human, like my disability made me less than. I hope you never make anyone feel that way again." Claire's meeting with Vincent was the last. Ben wanted to be there, but Claire asked to do it alone. When she emerged an hour later, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "He apologized," she said, "really apologized. Broke down crying, actually. Said he's been living in fear since the accident that put him in a wheelchair temporarily 10 years ago. He'd recovered, but he never dealt with the trauma. Seeing disabled people reminded him of his own vulnerability, so he pushed them away. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation." "Do you believe him?" Ben asked. "I think he finally understands what he did. Whether he's actually changed, time will tell." The legal settlement was finalized in January. Vincent Romano paid out over $400,000 in victim compensation and accessibility improvements. Bissimo stayed open, but barely. It would take years to rebuild the reputation Vincent had destroyed. The story eventually faded from the news cycle. Ben and Claire's relationship, however, continued to grow. They took things slowly, mindful of Lily and the complications of merging their very different worlds. Claire spent more time at Ben's small apartment than at her own house. She loved the cramped, lived-in feeling of it, the way it felt like a real home rather than the museum her house had become. "I want to help with your expenses," Claire said one evening after Lily had gone to bed. "Not because you need saving, but because we're building something together, and that means sharing resources." "I still struggle with that," Ben admitted. "Being a black man, I was raised to handle my own, not lean on someone else's money." "I know, but Ben, you've let me into your life. You've shared Lily with me, trusted me with something precious. Let me contribute too, not as charity, but as partnership." It took time, but Ben slowly learned to accept help without feeling diminished. To understand that Claire's wealth didn't make him lesser, just different. That love wasn't about equality of bank accounts, but equality of respect, trust, and commitment. In March, 6 months after that October night, Ben asked Claire to marry him. Nothing fancy, just the two of them at Angelo's, where it all really started, with Lily hiding under the table, barely containing her excitement. "Claire Donovan, will you marry me and my daughter and our chaotic, complicated, perfectly imperfect life?" Claire, crying and laughing, said yes. They got married in June in Claire's backyard. It was small, just close friends and family. Angelo catered, refusing payment. Marcus, Janet, and Thomas came, bringing their families. They'd all stayed in touch, bonded by their shared experience. Patricia came with her wife, proud of the case that had changed disability rights enforcement across the city. The Portland Building Department had implemented new protocols for following up on ADA violations directly because of the publicity from this case. Vincent Romano sent flowers with a note. "Congratulations. Thank you for giving me a chance to be better. The restaurant is now fully accessible, and I'm working with local disability advocacy groups to train other business owners. I hope that counts for something." Ben didn't know if Vincent had truly changed or just learned to be more careful, but the results mattered. Bissimo was now actually accessible, and several other Portland restaurants had voluntarily upgraded their accessibility features, not wanting to be the next viral story. As Ben stood watching Claire wheel down the aisle, Lily scattering rose petals ahead of her, he thought about that October night. How a single choice to speak up, to stand beside someone being treated unfairly, had changed everything. He'd lost his anonymity, he'd been sued, he'd had his motives questioned and his relationships scrutinized, but he'd also found love. He'd made real change happen. He'd given 7 people their voices back, and he taught his daughter the most important lesson, that doing the right thing is always worth the cost. Claire reached him, and Ben took her hands. "Ready?" she asked. "So ready." They said their vows with Lily standing between them, one hand on each of them. Ben promised to love Claire in all circumstances, to see her as she was, to stand beside her always. Claire promised to be his partner, to build a life with him and Lily, to choose them every day. When they kissed, Lily cheered louder than anyone, then immediately asked when she could call Claire Mom officially. "Right now, if you want," Claire said, pulling Lily into their embrace. At the reception, Angelo toasted them. To Ben, who showed us that one person can make a difference. To Claire, who showed us that wealth means nothing without compassion. And to Lily, who will grow up knowing that her father taught her to stand up for what's right. As the evening went on and the celebration continued, Ben found himself standing with Marcus, Janet, and Thomas, watching the dancing. "You know what's funny," Marcus said. "Vincent tried to bury all of us separately. Paid us off, made us sign papers, thought that was the end of it. But when you stood up and refused to be silent, it gave the rest of us permission to speak too." "That's the thing about standing up," Thomas added. "It's contagious. One person does it, and suddenly it's easier for everyone else." "I'm just glad it mattered," Ben said. "It mattered," Janet assured him. "You gave me back my dignity. You made sure my husband's memory wasn't tainted by that horrible night. That's everything, Ben." Later, as the party wound down and guests started leaving, Ben found himself alone with Claire on the deck overlooking the city. "You know what I was thinking?" Claire said. "What's that?" "A year ago, I was hiding who I was because I was afraid of being seen as either a victim or a trophy. I'd given up on real connection, and now I'm married to someone who sees me exactly as I am. Not my wheelchair, not my money, just me." I could say the same. A year ago, I was drowning in grief and bills, barely keeping it together, teaching Lily about kindness while feeling like the world punished it more than rewarded it. And now, I have you. I have a family. I have proof that doing the right thing actually does matter. We were both hiding, Claire realized. You and your small life, me and my big one. Both of us afraid to be fully seen. And then, Vincent Romano tried to keep you out of a restaurant. And you wouldn't let him. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights come on as the sun set. "Ben," Claire said softly, "thank you for seeing me that night, not as a millionaire or a disability or anything except a person being treated wrong." "Thank you for letting me stand beside you," Ben replied, "for everything that came after." Inside, they could hear Lily laughing, playing with the other children who'd been at the wedding. Their daughter now, legally and in every way that mattered. "You know what's going to be interesting," Claire said with a smile. "What?" Explaining to Lily that her college fund could pay for 1,000 college educations. "Oh God, I hadn't thought about that." "We'll figure it out, like we figured out everything else together." "Yeah," Ben agreed. "We will." They sat there as the stars came out. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who'd built something real from a single moment of courage. Because that's what it had been, really. Not heroism or activism or any of the grand labels people had tried to attach to it, just courage. The courage to speak up when others stayed silent. the courage to stand beside someone who needed it, the courage to let someone help when pride said no, the courage to love despite all the reasons it seemed impossible. And in the end, that courage had changed everything. Not just for Ben and Claire, but for 7 victims who got their voices back. For a city that started taking accessibility enforcement seriously. For countless disabled people who would be treated with more dignity because business owners were afraid of becoming the next viral story. One moment, one choice, one man refusing to walk away. It had been enough to change the world, or at least their corner of it. And really, wasn't that how all great changes started? Not with grand gestures or sweeping declarations, but with ordinary people making extraordinary choices in small moments that turn out to be anything but small. As Ben Carter held his wife's hand and listened to his daughter's laughter drift through the open doors, he finally understood what his own wife had tried to tell him in those last days before she died. "Take care of Lily," Tasha had said. "Teach her to be brave. Show her that kindness matters even when it's hard. Promise me." He'd promised, and he'd kept that promise, though he hadn't known where it would lead. It had led here to this moment, to this family, to this life. And it was more than enough. It was everything. And with that, the final words fade, but the story lingers on. I like to think that every story leaves behind a little bit of light to help us see our own lives more clearly. I'm curious, what's the one truth from this story that you feel you'll carry forward? And as always, it means the world to see where this story has found a home. So please feel free to share what city or country you're listening from. I believe stories are like a compass. They don't always give us the answers, but they can help us find our own way. If you believe in navigating life with a little more heart, consider subscribing. We're all fellow travelers here, sharing tales for the road ahead. Thank you for spending this hour with me. Your time is a precious thing, and choosing to spend it here is something I will never take for granted. Until the next chapter, find your light and let it shine.
Thank you for staying with Ben and Lily's journey to the very end. The lesson here is that every time we stand up for someone who's been pushed aside, even when we're just a black single dad trying to survive, there's a little pair of eyes watching and learning that kindness and courage still matter in this world.